Imagine this, a history book that's also an 800-year-old poem, and it was translated by a Victorian scholar who honestly both loved and hated it. Today, we're diving into the Rajatarangini, a rare window into the lost world of Kashmir's medieval kings, all thanks to that 12th century poet and his 19th century translator.
And here it is. Just look at it. This is the actual title page of the book we're talking about today. Jogesh Chunder Dutt's English translation of the Rajatarangini, specifically Volume 2, printed way back in 1887. What you're looking at is a Victorian-era project trying to unlock a text that was already ancient. So the book itself, it's a historical artifact in its own right.
So what exactly is the Rajatarangini? Well, the name itself is pretty epic. In Sanskrit, it literally means the River of Kings, a title that just perfectly captures its grand, flowing story. It was written by a Kashmiri poet named Kalhana way back around 1148 AD, and his goal was huge. He wanted to chronicle the entire history of the region's royal dynasties. So you've got this mix. It's part poem, part history, and honestly, there's nothing else quite like it.
And, this brings us to the big question. The central challenge here, not just for that 19th century translator, but for us, right now. How in the world do you reconstruct the past when your main source is a single, ancient text, one that's written in this flowery, poetic style by a guy who definitely had his own biases? That's the puzzle we're going to try and piece together.
So where do we even begin? Well, I think the best place to start is with the guy who spent years of his life translating this thing. Let's look at the preface written by the translator, J.C. Dutt. He gives us this incredibly honest 19th century critique of a 12th century book, and it's fascinating.
And you have to understand, when Dutt praises this book, it really means something. He points out that Kalhana was, he was basically one of a kind. At a time when Sanskrit literature was full of amazing poetry, mythology, and philosophy, Kalhana was one of the very, very few who actually tried to write a straightforward, chronological history. He was really attempting something new, something sober, as Dutt puts it. But Dutt's review is so great because it's perfectly balanced. It's not just praise. On one hand, he's thrilled to have this sober history. He respects that Kalhana was an eyewitness to some of the later events he wrote about and that the general story is mostly correct. But, on the other hand, you can feel his frustration with Kalhana the poet. He gets annoyed with the flowery language, the constant alliteration, and how the story gets bogged down in what Dutt calls insignificant incidents. You get the sense he saw it as both a priceless record and a total literary headache.
So that frustration that Dutt felt, it perfectly captures the historian's dilemma. Okay, so it's poetic, it's biased, it's frustrating. Why is this one single book so incredibly important?
This quote right here, from the book's introductory essay by R.C. Dutt, really sets the stage. For those early European and Indian scholars, the huge gaping hole in their knowledge was the lack of written chronological histories for ancient India. Think about it. The Greeks had Herodotus, the Romans had Tacitus, but ancient India just didn't really have that tradition of historiography. You had incredible epics and religious texts, but very, very few chronicles of events.
So that's the crucial point right there. The Rajatarangini's value comes from the simple fact that it exists. In this vast ocean of myth and poetry, it's like a rare island of chronological storytelling. Yeah, it has flaws, but those flaws are part of its character. Its very existence is what makes it an absolute treasure for historians. For a lot of these events, it's not just a source, it's the only source we have.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the book. How about we actually dive in? To really get a feel for what Kalhana's history is like in action, we're going to take a look at his account of one particularly wild reign from Book 8 of the text, the story of a guy named King Uchala. So meet King Uchala. He ruled Kashmir for just a decade, right at the start of the 12th century. And his story, the way Kalhana tells it, is the perfect example of this book's unique style. It's this gripping mix of detailed government policy, really high ideals, and then just brutal, shocking violence. So at first, Kalhana paints this picture of a model king, right? Uchala wasn't some monarch hiding in his palace. The story goes, he would wander the streets in disguise just to hear what people were really thinking. He was a champion of the weak, he punished corruption no matter who was involved, and he was apparently so charitable that he would actively go hunting for deserving people to give money to. But then we get to see his darker, maybe stranger side. Kalhana gives us this incredibly specific breakdown of how Ucha dealt with corrupt officials.
who were called Caiustes. And it wasn't just, firing them. No, it was this whole ritual of extreme public humiliation. This wasn't just punishment, it was political theater, and Kalhana recorded every single bizarre detail.
So, as you can probably guess, this unique blend of justice and cruelty made him a lot of enemies. And this is where Kalhana's narrative just kicks into high gear. It becomes a thriller. Officials who felt they were wronged get together and form a conspiracy. Guards he trusted betray him. Assassins are led right into the palace. His end was swift, it was bloody, and it was chaotic. And it kicked off this vicious power struggle for the throne.
And a quote like this just shows you Kalhana's power as a storyteller. I mean, listen to that. We get this visceral blow-by-blow account of the king's final moments. He's not just a name and a date on a timeline. He's a man fighting for his life, using his teeth, his hands, a small weapon, anything he can get his hands on. It reads less like an ancient chronicle and more like a scene from an action movie.
Okay, so let's pull back from the intense drama of King Uchalala's assassination for a second. What's our final verdict on the Rajatarangini? After looking at the translator's critique and diving into the text itself, what have we learned?
Well, its legacy is pretty clear, isn't it? This book is a singular achievement. It shapes so much of what we know about the region's early history. It's a story of politics and power that feels incredibly real, incredibly human. And the fact that we can even read it today is thanks to this amazing chain of preservation, from a poet in 12th century Kashmir to a translator in 19th century Calcutta, and now all the way to us.
So, in the end, you can't really call it a perfect, objective history, at least not by our modern standards. But maybe that's just the wrong way to look at it. Maybe its value isn't just in the facts it contains, but in what it shows us about how history itself is made and remembered and passed down. It's a true story of a kingdom, but it's told with the heart of a poet, and it's been filtered down to us through the skeptical but totally dedicated hands of a translator.
And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. The story of the River of Kings, this whole epic, it only survives by a thread of pure chance. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it, if this one book can hold so much drama, so much intrigue, and so much humanity. Just think of all the other incredible sagas, all the other entire histories that have been lost forever to the current of time.